Hey guys, it's TF Nut. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're doing another action figure review, a double review. This is going to be of some McFarlane Toys DC Multiverse figures. Never thought I'd see the day where I review those again, but this is going to be of the newer blue and gray variant of the Hush Batman, as well as the Knightfall version of Catwoman. Both of these I picked up a few weeks ago. I've been a little bit behind. I wanted to review these. I did open these a few weeks ago when I originally got them because I didn't know if I was actually going to review them. I ended up liking them a pretty good amount to where I decided to review them for you guys. I don't have the packaging anymore, but it's the pretty standard packaging that we have with pretty much any DC McFarlane Toys figures. You guys are pretty familiar with that by now. So, interestingly enough, the Batman has been sold out for a little bit. It came out sometime in March. And apparently it sold so well, it just hasn't restocked since, or I don't even know if it's going to even have like a second batch. I'm hoping in the future it does, because this is a pretty nice looking Batman. It's just a lot of figures in this line when I see them, especially some of the Batmans, I'm just like, I'm really not digging it. This one though, I came around to it, after it was sold out, unfortunately, but I got lucky and found it at a local GameStop for retail, so that was always good, and it is a pretty nice looking piece here. Now the Catwoman 2 is actually a little bit newer. It came out, I think, middle of April or beginning of April, and that one also looked pretty decent to me. They haven't made too many Catwomans from my understanding. I think just the Arkham City version and this one here as well. A Knightfall version would have been pretty cool. So these two don't necessarily go with each other because we have a Hush figure with a Knightfall figure, but I think that they both still look good together, and I still want to review them for you guys. Can go through quick 360 here. I'm going to go ahead and take a look at Batman first with the accessories that figure comes with, then we'll take a closer look at Catwoman. So again, apologies that I don't have the packaging this time to show you guys, but the back of the packaging was what we have on the card here, this illustration looking very nice. Batman Hush right there. If you absolutely need to know anything about Batman from this data file on the back, for anyone who's lived under a rock, there you go. Kind of wish I had a read-up of the actual Hush story, which is one of my more favorite Batman stories. So besides those, cards that we get, which Catwoman comes with one as well, this figure does come with fists, which is nice. Sometimes Batmans just come with a fist and an open hand and nothing else. This time though, we actually have some fists, and the figure comes packaged with some different open hands. We'll take a look at those later. I do kind of wish these were normal. This right hand, this left one is normal. This right hand, as you can see, has the kryptonite ring on there. I know why, because we will be eventually getting the normal version of the Hush Superman that they've already released at one point. I think it was a gold label. So I'm excited for that. But I understand why they have it with this. I do wish we had maybe one extra hand that was just a normal fist. But I think you could still make it work. If you really wanted to, I know I would not recommend it, but you could just cut this off, maybe repaint over it. I still wouldn't recommend it though. The detailing on here, all of it looks good with the nice knuckles. Back of the hands too. Looks like a little bit, I want to say there might be a little bit of like a grayish, blackish wash. Ever so subtle in the palm of the hands, to kind of bring out some of these details, or it could just be all blue. It just looks like it's a little bit darker in like some of the knuckles and like creases around the palms, but these look good. Some line work, as you can see in the design of the hands. All that looks rather nice. And then we get two of these exact type of Batarang here. Just take a look at one. This Batarang does look rather nice. There's not much to really mention with this. I don't have my volume of Hush with me right now, so I can't confirm if this is accurate. I'm going to assume it is. It's still pretty nice. It's just molded in this black plastic. It's actually a pretty soft plastic, both of these are. Some parts look a little glossy, and some look a little bit more matte. So that might be a tiny bit inconsistent, but that's really not that big of a deal to me. One thing I did forget to mention before I take a look at this actual figure, just like with Catwoman and a bunch of DC figures, this comes with the standard circular base, as you can see here. It has a DC logo printed on there. So, essentially, this one's going to really need it, because what happens is the way that these ankles are done, they're on ratchets. So, this is one stance, and then you want to move it forward, backward a little bit, excuse me, and that's how that's going to look like. So in order to make it look like it's standing all the way up, even though it really isn't, this is kind of difficult too. So the legs are slightly bent. If you have them straight, oh gosh, I might even fall over like this. If you have these legs straight, it's and then not on this base, then it's gonna lean either forward or backward no matter what. You can't just straighten out the legs like you should be able to, and these legs do kind of hyperextend, which will look a little goofy sometimes, but that's what it looks like if the legs are straight and the ankle's going back. My point is they need to do away with ratchets and make this more smooth. I don't like the ratchets on here. They get in the way of this being more posable than it should be. You know what I mean? If that made any sense. just be smooth. No ratchets. Anyway, this head sculpt is phenomenal. The sculpting on here is really sick. I really like the details. They have a little bit of like a wash in the eye, I feel like. Some of the details of like the lip color and the wrinkles around the chin and the mouth. That looks fantastic as well. This whole entire head sculpt is one piece. Keep that in mind if you want to swap heads around. Sometimes I think they're, just like a separate head and then a separate neck piece. But this time around, it will be all one piece. I'm not sure if there's another Batman that has all one piece with the head and neck that you can maybe use for unmasked head. Unmasked head would have been cool too. Not entirely necessary. The white of the eyes is cool. As you can see, some of the bones and jawline and the ears protruding into the mask there. These ears sticking up look really nice. A little bit of this muscle detail. Really the sculpt of just how his neck's going to look with this tight mask on. That looks good with a little bit of wrinkles around the neck as well. Bat logo here, protruding details, looking really good. It does look a little scratched up a bit. There's a tiny bit of blue on the chest right there. And, you can call me a liar all you want, but it did come like that. I mean, Marvel Legends has it sometimes worse. I'm just pointing out imperfections. Some parts look, it's mostly a matte finish with paint on here, and some parts look glossy for some reason. The rest of it, though, the details of the muscles, like in the abs, and is this placement of the abs supposed to be accurate? Looks a little off, but it could be accurate. The wrinkles that we have, as well as you can see the ribs, all that looks great. The pecs, muscles looking pretty good on this guy. We'll take a look at that cape in a second. This is going to be a bit of a hassle. But the details of the muscles and the shoulders are also nice. They also have a little bit underneath right there towards the armpit, but only towards the armpit really, because again, you can see that joint right there, which ruins it, which a lot of action figures have it. That wasn't really a bad thing, just to mention there's not much detail under there. Kind of a dumb moment. Not much else to mention. The gray paint, I think it's gray paint. It could be molded in a color. All this was molded pretty well. I think a little bit of paint in there too. Then we have some blue painted onto the gray. You could tell this is definitely molded in gray. Actually, it might be double painted. Could be molded in gray and then they add the gray paint. Because you could see where the pegs are. There's no paint on them. They're a tiny bit lighter than this actual gray here. They still blend together pretty well. This is one of the open hands. This is meant for grabbing one of the batarangs. I can't really do it. It seems like it's a little bit of a difficult hold. If you hold it like that, it will work. The other way around though, with this smooth edge into the finger, really, unless you like move it around a little bit, it doesn't really work all that well and it will fall out. But this is a softer plastic here, and it does look like the color of the wrist is a little bit off colored compared to the rest of that gauntlet. I don't own it, but what's good is that we do have some consistent paint, unlike where I think the 2-pack black and gray Hush had just like a black piece here. It was just off, like for the elbow joint. They actually painted some stuff. They actually didn't need to paint anything because this is just barely meets where the blue is in the gray. That's what this hand looks like here. It's also softer plastic. Not as soft as this one, I feel like, but it is more of like a sprawled action pose hand. We do have the belt, which actually is a pretty nice, like mustard yellow type of paint, and the pouches are really nicely sculpted. You can see the back too, some of those details. And you know, a lot of people like to call this a diaper piece, but the way that the trunks are done, they are a soft plastic, and they do have some wrinkles sculpted in there. It looks like a little bit of variation of blue, just ever so slightly in some areas, or it could be stressing with the plastic. I'm not entirely sure actually, but I haven't moved this around too much. There's the bat butt right there. So interesting how all that works. Yeah, it really is not very distracting, if I'm being honest. The rest of this, though, it's just kind of a basic muscular sculpt. Not much detail going on towards the legs. A little bit of, like, I don't know, something going on with the knees. That I mean, it looks natural. Just not sure what exactly is going on there. A little bit of muscles towards the shins. And then you do have the boots. That looks really good where the blue meets the gray. This is definitely a separate sculpted piece in there, I believe. I could be wrong. Yeah, I think somebody glued that in there. The toe articulation hinge right there is just black and is not blue. I do wish they painted that. But the rest of this, like the bottom of the feet, they look fine. Not much treading though. Really distracts, a little bit distracting ball joint for the ankles as well as the wrist. They do that a lot with the McFarlane toy stuff though. Quickly looking at the back, I do think that this soft plastic cape, I would like to replace it eventually with a fabric one, but it's pretty lightweight enough to where it's not too top heavy. The thing that makes it fall backwards is the ankle placement, not really this. The sculpting overall in the blue molded plastic, I think in some of these areas there's a little bit of like a black wash, but it's like a little bit of shading, I should say, not really a wash. The inside of the cape definitely has some shading towards the bottom there, because you can see where it gets really dark, and then towards up here, it's a little bit of a brighter blue. This is a little bit more pre-post, so it drapes over him a little bit, but it's not that distracting. But I do think eventually I'll replace this with a soft fabric cape, but it's still a pretty good cape what we have here. So while these figures do have pretty nicely implemented articulation, some of the design choices and overall engineering can get in the way of range of motion. So because this is all one piece, it does go side to side on a ball joint. Head really doesn't want to go all the way that, could a little bit, but you do start seeing where it's a little bit more smooth because of that ball joint. Going forward, it goes down that much. You don't really get that problem too much there. Swiveling is no problem though. Now, there should be a butterfly joint, as you can see with that separate piece in there, but it really doesn't want to move all that much. Arms could go all the way around though. They do go out pretty much all the way to the sides. That's nice. Upper arm swivel. These double jointed elbows are really tight on my figure, so yeah, be careful. I don't even know if yeah, there we go. I didn't know if I had to do it on camera or off camera. That was hard. That should not have been that hard. But we do have a hinge and then two different areas of swivel at the wrist. Ball joint at the waist here, which swivels decently. Forward and back and side to side is okay. Separate swivel here. It's a little bit hard to grab sometimes, but that's also a ball joint. So the range of motion is actually, it gets a little bit better, but there ends up being some gappage. Legs actually go forward that much, could be better. When you start to force it, as you can see, it makes the crotch look weird. Back actually decently though. And we do have actually kicks that go almost, actually I think they go all the way out. That's nice. You know, sometimes McFarlane toys don't have a decent thigh swivel, but it is implemented in here. It's just that this piece, the way that it's sculpted, will get in the way sometimes. But this time around, it's better. Actually, they're both pretty good. So we have some pretty good thigh swivel. It's not like a quick, you know, an entire 360, but it's still fine. Double jointed knees. Swivel at this ankle, which is a little bit tricky for me for some reason. Up and down on a ratchet. Swivel here, and then toe hinge. This time I will not forget to show off the base when it comes to Catwoman's accessories. Again, standard circular black DC, slight logo printing there. peg right here pegs into the hole, into the foot. The back of the packaging had this collectible card image on the back. Same thing here. From the comic, looking good. If you don't know anything about Catwoman, there you go. You can pause and read that if you want. Again, I do think it would be better if they gave particular read-ups of the specific storylines of what exactly they're doing in those storylines instead of just generic read-ups. But it's really not that big of a concern with me. So, this figure comes with these open, sprawled hands that could also double for clawing. Nice, glossy, black plastic. I think there might be a little bit of paint in there. I wouldn't blame them if it was just mostly black plastic because it doesn't look too bad. The claws, the actual nails, those come through really nice. So I don't really remember if they're supposed to curve inward or not. Some of them are more straight than others, but it's not really a big deal. It's just something I wanted to mention. And yeah, they peg in like that. And I don't know if I showed it off with Batman, but these wrist pegs are rather large. So there's Catwoman's. I could show off really quick, I guess, just because we're going to be here a bit. Batman's unplugs pretty well. His are also, that is the wrong fist. His are also rather large pegs. So the hands that don't come packaged with each figure, they're a little bit hard to put in, but the wrist pegs are thick enough for both these figures to where you're really not going to have much trouble. And this one fits in here rather nicely. I'll have images towards the end with all the different accessories mashed up together with these figures. Now, the other thing I want to show off, if I can zoom out a little bit, is the whip. So the whip here is this softer, rubbery type plastic. If we zoom in a little bit, you can see actually some really nice detailing in the handle. It's a little loop, as you can see here. If you were to remove one of the hands, you could probably fit this through her wrist. And then this large, I don't know if it's supposed to be this thick, but this is a rather thick, starting to get a little bit more thin towards the end. I guess I wouldn't say rope part of whatever the whip is, but the overall whip does have the end here. And, it's just, again, not much to talk about. It's mostly molded in this black plastic. It's a softer plastic here. And one thing I do want to mention, I'm only going to do this once, is that if you really wanted to, I will do it again. You can whip it. If you shouldn't, any kids out there, do not be whipping people with this because this will hurt. But the fact that this is, it's not a bendy wire, but it's a soft enough consistency to where you can make it whip a little bit. Maybe if you heat this up a little bit, you can pre-pose it in some ways. I think that's rather nice that it's not just sometimes what Marvel Legends does. They're better about it lately, but sometimes Marvel Legends just has this, thicker plastic that's pre-posed and it just kind of doesn't look super natural. I'm glad that they, it would have been cool if they implemented a bendy wire somehow, but this being a softer plastic so it can move any way you want is nice. So detail-wise, this face sculpt, I don't know if they're capturing the exact versions of these, characters from their lines, based on the art 100%, but this still looks rather good. I have both Hush and Knightfall somewhere. I just have to dig them up, and it's going to take too long to do while I'm doing these reviews. But this head sculpt here looks rather nice. They have a little bit like a purplish eyeshadow almost around the eyes there. The eyebrows, part of me feels like this is cockeyed, but I don't think it is. But the green eyes, those come through really nice the way that it's printed, as well as the purple lip color. A little bit of like blush almost, just a little bit around the cheeks and the chin. The actual detailing of the mask, where there's a little bit of line work going on there, and then the ears protruding, that looks really good. The hair has these pretty prominent blue streaks of paint in the black hair, and I think it actually doesn't look too bad. Maybe a little too heavy, but the actual sculpting is rather nice. We'll talk about articulation in a second, but I don't really know if this is supposed to move. This is on a softer plastic, so, sometimes I feel like this hair can, long hair can really make articulation for a character, the head articulation really bad. But this thing is like a softer plastic without a hinge and it moves around. I feel like I'm going to break it off. I don't know if anyone else's is like that. If they've implemented it so that it kind of moves around, with the soft plastic, and it's not going to break unless you really force it. Then I think that they've implemented that really nice, but it does at the same time. It doesn't really look all that natural. You see how it just pulls off of the sculpt right there. Just a little weird, but I don't hate it. Zooming out a little bit, we do have some wrinkles and stretching in the suit, done really well. I like the overall. There really isn't any texturing at all in this suit, and maybe a little bit, but details like zippers and all that are really nice. The articulation breaks up the sculpt a little bit, but you can kind of line it up a little bit better. But you know, parts like this where this line work is done, actually all that is rather consistent, all things considered. And then we do have wrinkles on the sides. Towards the back here, some more wrinkles. Purple, it looks a little bit darker here compared to this lighter purple. I think this is a saw. This could actually be a harder plastic, but part of me feels like this is a harder plastic. This is definitely a harder plastic. And this is another one of those softer plastic pieces. So it has a little bit of discoloration when you see all this purple going on here. Hopefully you don't hear the mowers in the background. Her arms, to me, I mean, these could look accurate again, but they look a little bit skinny. They were able to implement articulation pretty well, so that's really nice. The overall sculpt is still not too bad. It's like a glossy black paint here. Looking really good. The way that all of that is done. And the hands that she comes packaged with are also pretty consistent with the rest of the long glove here. But they're also glossy black paint, and pretty much the same with the hands, I'm pretty sure, after looking. There wasn't really anything matte about those. And I can't tell if they've molded it like this or if this is a paint scheme that they've gone with the overall. I'm pretty sure they've had some paint apps to make this look glossy. There's something else I wanted to mention. I think it was moving towards the legs, actually. This would have been a great time for Todd to implement any kind of upper thigh swivel. I think they've mentioned like years ago in the past where if it makes sense they can implement a thigh swivel. It's really only for characters that are on vehicles that get the thigh swivel, like some Geralt's in that new Ben Affleck Batman. But there is, kind of like Batman, implemented a swivel in here, but the sculpt of the hips gets in the way too much. They really should have just bit the bullet. I don't know why they consider this so taboo almost, where this is perfect for thigh swivels. They really should have put that in there. They really need to reconsider that. They're a little bit better about it now, but still not great. Some stretching towards the hips as well. I actually don't think that, again, the discoloration is a little bit distracting, but it all fits pretty well together. If I move it around, well, it starts to break up, of course. If it's the same thing with Batman, with how that articulation is done, where you just start seeing joints, unfortunately. That's just how it is. Just like the gloves up here, they do have a glossy black paint finish here, and there's a little bit of detailing, like some wrinkles in the knees right there. Same thing on the other side, around the ankles too, and even the actual joint. While it does look a little too much like a ball joint, this has some actually really good... they've really implemented like sculpting to make this look natural while it's a little bit more of a ball joint. It's a little bit too much of a ball joint at the wrists, and then the actual heels look really nice, glossy black boots right there, and the heels stick out really nice. So it was a little bit basic with some of the overall molding, but it's still really nicely detailed. Now that I've narrowly missed the lawnmower guy making noise in the background, articulation, we do have a dumbbell joint here. The up motion is better because this is a softer plastic, but overall it really doesn't want to go up that high. Down actually goes pretty decent. We do get side to side, but the hair pieces do kind of get in the way just a little bit, actually not too much. And then swivel, it's a little bit tight, you can hear that, but it can swivel all the way just fine. Now this is, I can't even tell if this also is a better butterfly joint compared to Batman. It really doesn't move around that much. Arms, they do go all the way around. Now going all the way out, as you can see, it actually is really nice, just as nice as Batman's. And this is a nice place to implement upper arm swivel. I'm kind of already beat the dead horse about it, but actually I don't think I used that word right. But regardless, double jointed elbows, bends really far. Now these do swivel at two places. It's a little bit hard to grab, and it kind of breaks up the sculpt just a little bit if you're rotating here, but it does fit back in form You go there, you swivel it at the actual wrist, and then it can hinge forward and back a lot. So the ball joints, you know, could be better. The swiveling is fine. Side to side is decent. And then the back motion just at the top is as far as it wants to go. Not really forward back at all. Combined with the one towards the waist, as you can see, actually, it really does not want to go forward that much. But the side to side is better, and it swivels no matter where you're grabbing on both these ball joint areas. So going forward, it actually goes forward pretty well, but you will end up stressing, if you keep it like this, stressing that softer plastic. It does go back pretty far. I think I already mentioned the splits are pretty much perfect. And then upper thigh swivels, while slightly implemented in there, barely move because of the actual sculpting going on in there. Now we do have double jointed knees right there. They kick all the way towards the back. That is really nice. And then we do have a swivel at this part of the ankle. The down motion is really nice, and an up motion actually works really well. And we do have swiveling. Sometimes, you know, the ankle rocker for characters in heels is pretty funky. That's what the stand is for. But this figure actually, if I can get it to, stands on its own. Rather, I'm not proving it any justice, but it can stand on its own pretty well. And then we do have toe hinge right there. I'm afraid if I put the ruler behind the figure, it's going to knock something over. So I'm going to put the ruler in front. We're going to measure 19.5 centimeters for Batman, just a little under 18 centimeters for Catwoman. That's going to put Batman around 7.5 inches and Catwoman just under 7 inches. So that's a little over a half inch taller for that Batman compared to Catwoman. But with most of the figures you see here, just a random assortment here, they're going to be taller than most 6-inch scale figures like SH Figuarts Kakashi, Black Series Mando, and Retro Marvel Legends Spider-Man. Closest thing to size, of course, is going to be the McFarlane Toys Classic Skin Doomslayer, which is still going to be a little bit shorter compared to Batman, but a little bit taller than Catwoman. So I mentioned this earlier, but both these figures, you know, they don't come from the same storyline, so they don't really fit all that much together. But I like how both of these look together. I'm glad I bought them both at the same time. I'm going to pose them next to each other in my DC display. I don't own that many McFarlane Toys DC figures, especially the Batman ones, just because a lot of the times I just feel like they don't look all that great. But out of all the ones I've seen, or really most I should say, this particular Batman is probably one of their better looking ones in terms of at least comic accuracy and just how they translate it into action figure form. It's a really nice looking piece with really nice details, paint apps. The amount of accessories is actually really fair for this figure. I do wish we still had a regular right fist, but that's fine with me that we just have the one with a ring on it. I do hope they implement more of the soft fabric capes like they have with the new Batman Flash figures for their future, you know, comic book figures and whatnot for Batman, at least, and other caped figures. But the soft plastic cape here isn't all that bad. It's just my biggest issue is mostly what's going on with the ankles with the ratchets there to make where he has to kind of bend all the time if he wants to stand without the base, which is rather unfortunate. But it is still a really good looking figure, and I can see why it ended up selling out as much as it did. Now, Catwoman, I feel like is actually going to end up being an underrated figure. It is a really nice looking figure. The way that the outfit is done, based on how it looks in Knightfall, is translated really well here, maybe except for the head sculpt. That could be a tiny bit inaccurate, but I don't think it's too bad. The amount of accessories here, I do wish she also came with some fists, but what we do have is rather nice. She holds her whip rather well, even though it is a bit of a snug fit because it's a pretty big handle. Articulation could be a little bit better in those hips, mostly talk about the thigh swivel. And she does have some ratchety stuff going on there too, to where it's a little bit harder to pose because of those ratchets. But it is still a really nice looking figure. A lot of details like the black gloss on her, and the overall purple is rather consistent, even though some of it is a softer plastic compared to the harder stuff. So impressed with both of these. I don't know if it's going to make me keep going on this line. I really don't want to have to commit to this particular line just because a lot of the figures I don't really love how they look once I see promo images. But you know, if hopefully there are good looking figures in this line and they end up being really good figures like these two here, once you get them out of the box, I'll definitely pick a couple more up. I'm pretty critical of McFarlane Toys, but I have to admit they did a really good job here. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Comment down below what you think about the figures, what you think about the review. Leave a like, share amongst your friends, follow me on Instagram for more content over there, and I'll see you guys later.